Welcome to the Cedar Creek Bible in a Year podcast. Whether you are listening on your own, with a friend, or a group of friends, we hope this podcast helps you connect with Scripture and also enriches your relationship with God. Here are your hosts, Luke Shortridge and Andy Rechtenwald.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Luke Shortridge hanging out with Andy. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Luke?
Awesome. Andy, how many consecutive days in a row have you worked without a day off? That's what I want to know.
That's a very good question.
This is the life of a young youth pastor, student ministry pastor. Student ministry pastor.
Thank you. Yes, we, camp, Fusion Camp, Moab, some other stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I'm out.
Just give me a number, Andy.
It's like probably 14, 15, perhaps maybe 16.
You think you're too good for the Sabbath?
No, I don't think
Sabbath is for other people, but it's not for Andy.
This is not how I envisioned this to go. Anyway.
Well, the reason why I ask, beyond just the fact that I care about my podcasting partner, is, Andy, how's your marriage doing?
My marriage is great. I love marriage.
Wow. Are you genuine in that?
I'm very genuine. You can see it on my face.
How's your marriage really doing?
It's a very awkward question. It's going very well.
Well, our listeners expect transparency.
Yeah,
they have high standards.
I'm being very transparent. Well, it's going very well.
Fantastic. All right, don't give us too much. But today we are talking about Song of Songs, which is about marriage.
Yeah.
It's a little bit dicey. It's a little bit racy.
It's a good word for it. Yeah.
Controversial. You know, there were some scribes that were excommunicated because they translated the Song of Songs too explicitly. That's true.
Too explicitly?
Yes.
So they added things, or
no.
They just
translated
literally
scandalous body parts that are described in Song of Songs and were excommunicated for it. I'm not making this up.
You think they when they have you know what? No, this needs to be in there, and you can excommunicate me if you want.
Tone it down. The people can't handle it.
I'm writing this word
It's in the Bible. Tone it down. We don't care. All right. Well, I went back and I looked at some marriage advice from the 1940s and 50s.
Oh, jeez.
Now, there are some lists that are floating around that are fake.
Yeah.
So I dug a little deeper and I found out that these are actual quoted sourced marriage advice from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I thought it'd be fun just to see through the generations.
Sure.
And this is advice specifically for wives, for women.
Okay, this will definitely be fun then.
Better treat their husbands. So we'll just kind of jump in here. So this one is from 1951. Alfred Henry Trier says, a social service meeting or an afternoon tea, a matinee, or a whatnot is no excuse for there not being dinner ready when your husband comes home from a hard day's work. This is actually advice in the 50s. All right. Edward Petoskey in 1943, he had some very important marriage advice for wives, and that is, don't bother your husband with petty troubles and complaints when he comes home from work. Yeah, I love that, we're just assuming the wife does not work because it's the 40s.
Sure.
So just take that for what it's worth.
He's rolling over in his grave now.
Remember, your most important job is to build up and maintain your husband's ego. And then he puts in parentheses, which gets bruised plenty in business. Morale is a woman's business.
Wow.
That's what I know. And then he says, be a good listener. Let him tell you his troubles. Yours will seem trivial in comparison. It's so condescending.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, this one's even worse. This is the 30s. So this is Parade Magazine, 1938.
Okay.
Don't be sentimental or try to get him to say something he doesn't want to by working on his emotions. Men don't like tears, especially in public places.
Oh, my gosh.
It's like men need to be protected and sheltered. They're fragile. Okay, here's a good one. Don't sit in an awkward position. Never look bored, even if you are. Be alert. And if you must chew gum, not advised, do it silently and with your mouth closed. These are horrible.
Well, that tip, though, is good for everybody. You should chew with your mouth closed.
Don't take Parade Magazine's side, Andy.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Here's the last one. Don't talk about clothes or try to describe your new gown to a man. Please and flatter your date by talking about the things that he wants to talk about. There you go. There's your key to unlocking perfect relationship.
Nothing like starting off your day with a little bit of sexism.
Wow, there you go.
Anyway,
So there's plenty of bad marriage advice out
yeah.
there. I was looking because I thought, maybe I'll find some modern advice to, show how far we've come. The stuff today out there
man.
is just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah.
I saw an article that said, life is short, have an affair.
Oh, there's a website. What's it called? Do you know what it's? No, there's a
No,
website.
I don't know what it is.
No, this is
and
huge.
I don't want to know what it is.
This is crazy.
Do not tell our listeners about this website.
I won't say the name of it,
Okay.
but it was created so that guys or girls could go on there and cheat on their spouses. They set the whole thing up.
Wonderful.
But the crazy thing is, it just got hacked by some German group. And they're threatening to expose all the people on the list unless they take the website down. So yeah, crazy stuff. But yeah, that's interesting. Yep, life is short. Have an affair. That is probably an advertisement for that website.
Well, today we're going to talk about Song of Songs, also known as Song of Solomon. It's a guidebook for husbands and wives, and it's also a celebration of God's design for sex, love, and marriage.
Yes.
So sex is very good, created by God. Not evil, it's not dirty.
Nope.
But of course, it's been twisted by Satan and by people.
Sure.
So I heard a quote. I thought this was interesting. And it says that sex is like nitroglycerin. It has the power to heal hearts or blow up bridges. That's pretty much
that's
true.
pretty spot on.
Yeah.
That's a
And,
good quote.
some people think that God's design for sex and marriage is outdated. That's what was great for our grandparents, but it just really doesn't translate today. The wisdom in Song of Songs really is timeless, and people today can say, oh, nobody could really follow that. But here's my question. The traditional American way of dating, sex, living together, getting divorced easily, has this made us better as a society, or has it just made our lives more complicated?
Right.
Yeah.
I think
that was rhetorical. Don't answer that
I've
question.
I've heard another sentiment. I guess it might be a bad word for it, but when people say, how's that working out for you? So the mentality or the idea that you just talked about with Western culture in particular, of the, what do they call that movement in the 60s?
Feminism?
The sexual liberation movement or whatever it was called, how that has damaged the family in particular in the United States. And then because of that, people in general. And so the question people would ask is, how's that working out for you?
Yeah. I think, I am all about the equality of women. I think that women should certainly be an equal in marriage. I think that, women should not have lesser positions than men or be paid less. But as you said, the liberation piece of just have sex with whoever you want doesn't need to be, tied down to marriage. When we start going outside of God's design for how he created the family structure to be, we get ourselves in a whole mess of problems.
A lot, yeah.
And that's what Song of Songs is about. I mean, it's a story. It's a story of a husband and wife and them celebrating God's design for sex and marriage and love.
Yeah, it's a very interesting book, and it is a good one to study because there's a lot of different views on what the writer is writing about, who's writing it, like who's he talking to, all that kind of stuff. But it is a great marital study, I guess, and especially as it pertains to the topic of sex, which I think a lot of times in the church we try to stay away from because of how volatile that topic is. But the Bible here especially talks a lot about it.
Love it. So let's get into some context for the book. I'd say the purpose of the book is to tell of the love between a groom who is Solomon.
Yeah.
Again, if you've listened to previous shows, we've talked a lot about Solomon.
Yep.
But this book was probably written by him early in his life, so as a young man. And then his bride, who she's not ever named, but it's just the bride. And then also to affirm the sanctity of marriage and to really picture God's view of what marriage should be and can be.
Sure. So we would say that Solomon wrote the book, and he's most likely writing it, just like with Ecclesiastes, he's most likely writing it to younger students, people he wants to impart some sort of wisdom to. And he probably wrote it early in his reign, as you just mentioned. But as with some biblical writings, there's probably some compositions or parts of it that are edits from later generations.
Yep. The setting of it would be, there's a garden that's talked about early on where there's also like a dream that's happening. So the king's palace, it's kind of interesting. As the couple moves around, the setting kind of changes and follows them as they go.
Sure, and then you got the key people involved in this book. Obviously, Solomon, who plays the groom, the young woman who's the bride, and then their friends. Those are the key people in the book.
Cool. So not mentioned in the book are Solomon's many other wives. If you've listened to previous shows, you know that Solomon ended up having something around 700 wives, and all was said and done. Here's what I would say. At this point when he wrote this, I think that he thought this woman was going to be his one and only wife.
Sure.
But knowledge of God's word and earthly wisdom was not enough for him to actually do it and follow through.
Sure.
And he paid dearly for some of the other problems that came with just living to excess in many areas of his life. So I think you have to study the book as a standalone piece at a certain place and time in his life.
Yep.
We know the rest of the story, but as it's being written, he didn't know he was going to allow so many different other women to enter into his life and ultimately take his heart away from God.
Right, and I think that's very important. Read the book within its context, and to know that he did have 700 wives, 300 concubines, all that. We should read Ecclesiastes like we talked about in the last podcast and see
What it led to.
Right. So, good point.
All right, so some of the themes of the book, sex, as we've mentioned, is God's gift to us. Sex has a dirty rap in the church world a lot of times. You think about the old strict church ladies that want to keep a lid on things.
Sure.
But that was never God's intention.
Right.
God created sex completely pure and innocent. I would say that if a husband is thinking about his wife in a sexual way, he's being as pure as an altar boy.
Yep.
He is. It's only Satan and then people that have taken something God has created as beautiful, used it in different contexts, and use it for destruction and evil purposes.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like, you don't see on TV or anything like the glorification of marital. This might be really weird, but like they don't talk about marital sex in a good light.
No.
It's always like, sick. Who wants to talk about that?
Totally.
It's always the sinful, promiscuous type of sex that's glorified and pushed in the media.
I've heard it said Satan spends a lot of his energy finding ways to get single people to have sex with each other and then having married people not have sex with each other. Both please him.
Yeah, good stuff. Another theme in the book is the theme of love. So obviously when you talk about sex, love is always going to be kind of intertwined in there. Hopefully. As the relationship develops in the book between the bride and the groom, you get to see this romantic poetry stuff go on between the bride and the groom. It is, I think, and that's important for us to look at it as a poem because it helps you to read it properly. And then you see through this process the intense power of love and how it affected their minds, their bodies, and their hearts.
Cool. Commitment is another huge theme throughout the book. The power of love. It represents more than an emotion. That love, as God designed it, is a choice.
Yep.
It's something that you choose every day, that I'm going to continue to be committed to this person for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I've heard it said when people are going through struggles in their marriage that I just don't love this person anymore. And I think it was Tim Butler that said on the weekend, one of the weekend messages here a while back, that you need to go home and you need to love your spouse. You need to choose to love them despite the way you, quote, feel right now. And our culture has equated love with a feeling when in the biblical texts, it's always an action. Jesus defined it as laying down your life for somebody. So love can be influenced by the feelings you have for someone, but it is not a feeling. It's a choice. It's an action.
Very good. Beauty is another strong theme. The two lovers see beauty in each other.
Yeah.
They also describe certain beautiful aspects of each other, which are kind of odd. I mean, some of the analogies that are used don't really translate to today, but we still get to read it and see it. And it's interesting when you look at some of the context of that because they really are complementing each other in their beauty.
Sure. And then one other theme we were going to kind of touch on is problems, specifically within a relationship. And at certain times, for those of you that are married or have been in a committed relationship, you know that feelings of loneliness, isolation, or other problems can kind of creep in. And I think it's important that we discuss as people how to deal with those within the context of a relationship.
Cool. So the book is split into 5 parts, and they don't really follow a seamless order. It kind of jumps around. As you mentioned, this is a poem.
Yep.
So it does kind of go here, there, here, there. It'll talk about the wedding day of the bride and groom, and then also it kind of goes back to the memories of the courtship. Then you also have this nighttime search that happens where the woman can't find her husband. She's looking all over frantically for him. Mm-hmm. And then also the young woman's invitation and closing words after that as well. It's a short book. It's only 8 chapters long, but very beautiful, very powerful. And as you said, I think, early on with my wife, I think we were married about a year or two.
Yeah.
We read it together.
Yep.
And it was a powerful experience to read this book, which is, really the ultimate poem on love and marriage by God. To read it as a couple, as a husband and wife.
Yeah.
Really cool, but a little bit steamy.
A little bit.
And uncomfortable at points.
That's why you should read it when
in
you're
all the
married.
best ways.
Yeah, and I think that the key part of there too is, as we said earlier, marriage is not something glorified in our culture other than on the wedding day. Like after that, it's just boring. We're married now, but it should be something celebrated constantly throughout life. And so this book, if you read it with your spouse, it definitely points you back to the beauty of marriage and how awesome it is and the way God designed it.
Yeah, TV has ruined us in certain ways.
Sure.
If you think about your favorite couple in a soap opera. So there's everything that leads up to marriage, which is really exciting. Then you have the wedding, which is super exciting.
Yep.
Next is having kids. If you don't have kids, your relationship's boring. And then once kids come, there's really nothing else you can do except get divorced and start all over.
Yep.
So in a TV arc, they're always, once you get married, you've kind of peaked, and now it's worse, worse, worse. That's not how it is in Scripture
Not at all. No, and
God's view is that marriage would get better and better and better as time goes on.
And I've only been married for a short time, but it seriously does. Like every year gets better and better, and the experiences you share with your spouse, different vacations or just family experiences they're better every year. And I would say that is the plan God has for marriage, not it's boring after the wedding day.
There you go. Let's get into the text. So every week we want to give you guys an opportunity to dive into God's Word with us. If you are listening on your phone, you can switch over to a Bible app. If you have a paper Bible close by, I would ask you to pull that out. We're going to be in the New Living Translation today as we read. We're also going to have some questions, and our hope is that you would take some time to journal on those questions. If you're listening with a group of friends, feel free to stop the podcast and discuss when we get to those questions. That's how you will really get the most out of your podcasting experience.
Yeah, so guys, we're going to be in Song of Songs, chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Here's what it says. This is Solomon's Song of Songs, more wonderful than any other. Kiss me and kiss me again, for your love is sweeter than wine. How fragrant your cologne, your name is like its spreading fragrance. No wonder all the young women love you. Take me with you, come, let's run. The king has brought me into his bedroom. How happy we are for you, O king. We praise your love even more than wine. How right they are to adore you.
Whoo, boy, that is steamy. Good stuff. All right, Andy, first question right out of the bat. Would you consider yourself a romantic at heart? Why or why not?
No.
Oh, that's so anticlimactic.
I know.
Your poor wife.
But I'll say this. As with what we know about love, it being an action, I think because it's not natural to me to be romantic, I do try really hard at doing romantic things. So it's not like it's not like there's no romance in the marriage. It's just that it's not something that comes naturally to me to do those kind of things.
When's the last time you bought your wife flowers?
Great question. She doesn't like flowers.
So never. Great job.
I did. I bought flowers for her one time, and she was very upset that I spent money on flowers. She did not like it. She doesn't like flowers. She didn't want them at the wedding. But
her pragmatist. Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. But I do have to work at being romantic.
Yeah, I'm not romantic either. To be completely frank, if you listen to my love letters from the Psalms podcast, you know. Yeah, my poor wife. And Andy, we really married up, dude.
Yeah, we did.
So Jewish tradition for this story says that Solomon frequently visited different parts of his kingdom, and he's going to the northern gardens, and he's checking out his different parts of his lands. Well, he sees this beautiful woman, and she is scared because he's the king. And she runs away from him. So he's like, I really need to meet this girl. So he comes back disguised as a shepherd and wins her heart and then reveals himself as king and says, come back to the palace with me. And that's kind of where Jewish tradition says that,
I hope
this whole
that's
thing
true.
comes from. It's got to be true.
I hope it's true.
If there's a young romantic somewhere deep inside your heart, then it's true. It's just legend. I don't know if that's what happened or not.
Sure, man.
But
I'll take
that's
it.
what Jewish legend says. So
we're going to be moving on then. We'll be in chapter 2, verse 7, and then we'll skip up to chapter 2, verses 15. So here's what 7 says. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and wild deer, not to awaken love until the time is right. Verse 15. Catch all the foxes, those little foxes, before they ruin the vineyard of love, for the grapevines are blossoming.
So our question here is, what types of problems destroy a marriage relationship, and how can this be avoided?
Great question.
Andy, do you remember the Fox's verse from Pre-Marriage Mentoring? We talked about this. We talked about it in depth.
Yeah, maybe. Refresh my memory.
So when Andy and Kayla were doing Pre-Marriage Mentoring with my wife and I.
Yes. Is this the pizza story?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I
Good
remember
man.
it. Yeah. Your first fight with your wife was over frozen pizza.
Yep, sure
Yep,
was.
I remember
so nothing like marriage can show you how selfish you are. And when my wife and I were married, you come into marriage with different traditions, family backgrounds.
Yep.
Well, a tradition in my family was always that you got frozen pizza in the fridge. That's your go-to meal in case dinner plans don't work out. Oh, the freezer.
Okay.
Fridge freezer combo. And that was just something we always did at my family. So we're on a budget. We're trying to do things right. We have so much to spend. We go through grocery shopping. I think this is the last time we ever went grocery shopping together, to be completely frank.
Wow.
So we're going through, we're picking out the things we need. We get to the frozen food aisle, which is last.
Yep.
And we only had like $3 left. So I'm like, hey, we better pick up some frozen pizzas because that's what my family always does. And Sarah's like, well, we don't have money for that. So what are we putting back? And I'm like, what do you mean we don't have money for that? So we had our first marital spat. It wasn't an argument, but it was a disagreement.
Yep.
In the frozen food section of Kroger because I threw a little fit. I wanted frozen pizza. And you go back to this verse, catch all the little foxes, those little foxes that will ruin the vineyard of love. And oftentimes in marriage, it isn't the big things that really cause disagreements. It's the little stuff, the little selfish, I want this, I want that, my way, no my way. And if those are allowed to go unchecked, and if you don't talk about them, they do start to build up, and little things can become big things.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff there. Let's move on to Song of Songs 4, 1-4. You are beautiful, my darling, beautiful beyond words. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. Your hair falls in waves like a flock of goats winding down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are as white as sheep.
I'm sorry, this is hilarious.
I know. Your teeth are as white. I mean, if I told, well, we'll keep going. Your teeth are as white as sheep, recently shorn and freshly washed. Your smile is flawless, each tooth matched with its twin. Your lips are like scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is inviting. Your cheeks are like rosy pomegranates behind your veil. Your neck is as beautiful as the Tower of David, jeweled with the shields of 1,000 horses.
This is just odd.
Yeah, it's a weird way to describe the person you like.
So we talked about the theme of beauty, and he really is trying to compliment her. I mean, he's thinking of the most poetic, majestic things that he can think of, and it gets even weirder if you keep going. I cut out, the later verses that are a little more
It's a family
intense.
podcast, yeah.
But the truth is that he's thinking of, this is 3,000 years ago. He's thinking of the things around him that he admires, that he sees as beautiful, and he's comparing his bride to sheep and goats.
Yeah,
in the towers of David.
If I
he's
ever
trying
said,
though.
I know. If I ever said to Kayla, "Hey, your hair looks great today," kind of like a bunch of goats running down the mountain.
We men are so hopeless. We've been hopeless for 3,000 years.
Anyway, so here's our question for you. There is a point to this particular portion.
Okay.
What does complimenting a woman's physical features have to do with God? Why in the world is this in the Bible? This is a serious question.
Okay. So my take on it is that marriage is an analogy for our relationship with God. The marriage relationship, as God designed it, is the most intense, the most passionate, dramatic relationship that we as humans can experience. And it is a relationship for God's relationship with us. So the same way that Solomon is complimenting his bride and talking about her beauty and really fixating on the different aspects of her, we're to do that with God.
Sure.
We are to adore God for who he is. And when you pray to him, there should be times where you compliment him, not just on what he does for you, but on who he is in his very nature.
Yeah, and I think that to keep the analogy going, when you talk to your wife and you compliment her on the way that she looks every day, if you say something, you look really good in that dress or something like that, it is analogous to the way that you compliment God. It's not that God needs those compliments, and it's not like your wife absolutely needs those compliments, but it definitely is something for you to show, like you said, adoration towards the person that you are complimenting, and that is huge. And when you compliment your wife, and she knows you're being genuine, like, and you're not just saying it to get brownie points or whatever, but you're saying like,
you really care about her.
Yes.
You're
Yep,
letting
that's
it
for
be
sure.
known.
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Okay, we're going to be in chapter 4, verses 9 through 10. It says,
You have captured my heart, my treasure, my bride. You hold it hostage with one glance of your eyes, with a single jewel of your necklace. Your love delights me, my treasure, my bride. Your love is better than wine, your perfume more fragrant than spices. So, answer this from your current life situation. What is the best part of being married? What do you think is the best part of being married? And then what do you think is the most difficult part? So, Andy, what do you think? What's the best part of being married from your current life situation? You clearly are married.
sure.
And then what's the most difficult part?
I love being married. It's one of the coolest. It's the coolest thing ever, pretty much, in my opinion. And the best part for me is that Kayla and I are, and this might sound really mushy, whatever. We're best friends. I mean, we laugh at the same crap. Like we're just best friends. I mean, I'd put it that way because she would laugh if I said that. And we love to just go and do things together. We just went on vacation. I was in school for most of it, but we got to go on a bunch of different adventures while we were there. We're just goofballs, and I don't know. It's
You
just
guys are really cute together. I can say that.
it's awesome.
We're close enough friends.
That's my favorite part. The most difficult part of marriage are all the variables that come along with it, because you expect as a person that the person you're marrying is going to approach things the same way you do and react to things the same way you do and come into marriage with the same whatever, I don't know, just stuff that you do. And you realize that you don't. It doesn't have to be super difficult. That's why I love the pre-marriage mentoring process we have at Cedar Creek, because it allows you to kind of point out the things that could potentially be those little foxes in your marriage, so that when they do happen, like when I say, I'll let Kayla take out the trash today, but I know that's not something that she would initially do, then the trash is going to sit there and one of us is going to get frustrated. And so I know from my perspective and from our situations that that's my role, and I'm going to do that particular thing. And so that's the most difficult part, I think.
Good stuff, man.
What about you?
Man, there's so many great parts. My wife and I just celebrated 10 years of marriage.
Wow, congratulations.
I can truthfully say it's gotten better and better and better. There's so many great parts to it. I think I love the fact that we are a team, that the problems that we face them together.
Yep.
The good stuff that we get to experience, we do that together, that we are both in it for the long haul. And I love, too, that at times we can allow our marriage to, this is going to sound cheesy, but allow our marriage to be a ministry where we can minister to others through it. I think that's really cool. What's tough is we're very different people. My wife is organized, detail-oriented. I'm kind of a free spirit, so at times I know I can drive her a little batty, but man, she loves me and cares about me, and she puts up with me.
I think that people ask our wives the same question.
What were you thinking?
How do you, what? And then they say, we can't control them. I've heard your wife say that on several occasions.
Her standard line, of course, is, I knew what I was getting myself into. On our first date, we watched Braveheart. This was my idea.
You dog.
Oh, yeah. 3 hours,
Good for
nudity,
you.
Swearing, killing people. That was our first date.
Dude, Braveheart. Wow.
Yeah.
Kayla has never seen it.
Well, good thing she's already married to you. All right, so let's get back to Song of Songs, chapter 8, 13 through 14. The young man says, "Oh, my darling, lingering in the gardens, your companions are fortunate to hear your voice. Let me hear it too." And the young woman says, "Come away, my love, be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices." The poem ends with an invitation here for the groom to go away with her, to enjoy their life together.
Yeah.
I think that's really fitting because it really does show God's invitation to us, that he is saying, come away with me, be my son, be my daughter, that experience my love and allow me to show you life and life abundantly. That is what Christ says to each of us. That's his hope for each of us. And it really is the same call that the groom and the bride have for each other.
That's why marriage is so important. I mean, people might wonder why Christians in particular are so concerned about
the sanctity of marriage,
because it's not just a relationship. It is a reflection, and probably on this earth, the most pure reflection you can have of the relationship between Jesus and his church.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important for sure.
I love, there was a book that Sarah and I read as we were dating called A Sacred Marriage. And The point of marriage is not to make each other happy.
Right.
The point of marriage is not have great kids.
Yep.
The point of marriage is to reflect the love of Christ in a human way so that other people can see God's love on display.
For sure. So here's the question we have for you guys. Is Jesus the true love of your life? And on what do you base your answer?
You know, when I was 14, something changed. I had gone to church my whole life, but for some reason it clicked and Christ started to become the center of my life. I can't say he's always stayed there at times. I've got my own selfish ways, but no longer did I think getting a girlfriend was going to solve all my problems. I wanted to become more Christ-like.
Yeah.
And, you know, I could slowly see my priorities shift through that. And I know that today Christ has my heart. He really does. And it's changed everything about myself. It's changed how I think. It's changed how I relate to other people. And when you allow Christ to be at the center, I think you see the world around you drastically differently.
Yeah.
And you see that the people around you aren't there to give you happiness or to give you whatever fulfillment, that the people in our lives are there so that we can serve them and show them love as Christ first served us and first loved us.
For sure. And I think that especially important in what you were talking about is when you ask the question, is Jesus the true love of your life? I think what we have a tendency to do, especially if you're single or whatever, is to say that if I honor Christ, if I put him at the center, then he will give me a wife, husband, whatever, and then everything will be okay. But if that's your mentality, Christ is not the center of your life. He's a stepping stone to something, quote, greater.
Yep.
And for me as a person, the biggest part of my life has to be Jesus. And as you said, you will drift all the time. And you should be able to notice when you're starting to not be filled up as more because you try to replace the joy that Christ gives with the joy that your wife gives or your kids. You know, I have a 6-month-old daughter, and every time she smiles, there's this part of me that just is like, that's awesome. But if I try to pursue my 6-year-old daughter in the same way that I would pursue Jesus, she's gonna disappoint me in ways that I can't even imagine right now. And in the same with Kayla, love her to death. But if I try to love her and if I try to put her in the same spot as I love Jesus, then she's going to be a massive disappointment to me. And that it's not fair to do that to those people.
You cannot be Jesus Christ to anyone else. And the people in your life cannot be Jesus Christ to you. They are a poor replacement for an infallible God.
Yep. And I think that is something that we have to remind ourselves of all the time. Your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your job, your money, it's never going to be a replacement for him.
Song of Songs. It's a wild one.
That's for sure. We talked earlier, those scribes getting excommunicated for writing the actual translation down.
Well, if you would like to read the rest of the book, you'll see more of the scandalous side of the book, which we didn't go into huge depth because it's a family podcast, you know. But I would encourage you guys, go back, read it, especially if you are married, read it with your spouse. I think it will do great things for your relationship, and it will enrich your life for sure.
Definitely. Well, guys, if you want to connect with us, you can find us on Facebook. I'm Andy Rechtenwald. Luke Shortridge he's got his own Facebook page. We would accept your friend request, take any feedback, any questions. You can also email us at podcast@cedarcreek.tv.
Sweet. And if you are willing, we would love for you to write a review in the iTunes store for this podcast. You can also find us on the Cedar Creek app. Let people know with Android. You can always find us on the Cedar Creek app. Yes, there is an app for that. You can share on social media the link to our show. It helps other people find it, which we really appreciate.
Great. Well, next episode, guys, is Isaiah.
One of our favorites. Andy, I think you have a tattoo of Isaiah somewhere on your body.
I have Isaiah.
I can't wait to find out more about that.
I do. I have some portion of Isaiah tattooed on my left arm. Isaiah's a prophet foretelling of the Savior. I mean, that Isaiah's my favorite major prophet book in the Bible.
Sweet.
So
Can't wait.
I'm pumped. We'll see you next time.
Bye.